A friend shared this beautiful legend with me about a king who decided to set a special day in which to honor his greatest subject. When the big day arrived, there was a large gathering in the palace courtyard. Obviously, this was before the time of social distancing. 4 finalists were brought forward, and from these 4, the king would pick his very best subject. The first person presented was a wealthy philanthropist. The king was told that this man was highly deserving of the honor because of his humanitarian efforts. He had given much of his wealth to the poor. The second person was a celebrated physician. The king was told that this doctor was highly deserving of the honor because he had rendered faithful and dedicated service to the sick of the kingdom. The third person was a distinguished judge. The king was told that the judge was worthy because of his noted wisdom, his fairness, and the brilliant decisions he made. The fourth person presented was an elderly woman. Everyone was quite surprised to see her there because her manner was quite humble, as was her dress. She hardly looked the part of someone to be honored as the greatest subject in the kingdom. What chance could she possibly have when compared to the other 3 who had given so much? Even so, there was something about her. There was a look of love on her face, the understanding in her eyes, her quiet confidence. The king was intrigued and somewhat puzzled by her presence. He asked who she was. The answer came, "Do you see that philanthropist? Do you see that doctor? Do you see that judge?" The king said yes. This woman was their teacher when they were in school. The woman had no wealth, no fortune, no title, but she had selfishly given of herself to produce these great people. She was the greatest subject. There's nothing more powerful to Christ than our giving of ourselves in love. Often, as the king almost might have done that day, we can miss the value of those around us. I think it would surprise us to know how often we can miss the presence of Christ, just as Clopas and his brother did as they walked along the road that day. Despite his explaining the scriptures to them, they had never noticed that it was the Lord. Then finally, the 2 brothers invite Jesus into their home. Jesus has dinner with them, and he transforms the event. There at that ordinary dinner, at the end of the day, this stranger takes the bread. He blesses it. He breaks it. He gives it to them, and their eyes are open. In that moment, their lives were transformed. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus often refers to food or indeed to meals. You might remember the story of the prodigal son, where the fattened calf was prepared. We can remember the parable of Jesus and telling about the son who asked his father for a fish. Jesus spoke about the new wine in new wineskins. He spoke of measuring out the meal, of the women working at the grinder of the grain together. We can remember him inviting himself to the meal at Zacchaeus' house. Jesus even chose a meal as a way by which he would be remembered. On this day, after a walk to Emmaus, Jesus reclaimed the lives of those disciples for himself. You see, the resurrection changed and changes everything. It is transformative. It moves us from despair to new possibilities of life. It takes us in our blindness and opens our eyes. It transforms ordinary bread into a holy and sacred meal. It takes two sad, lost brothers on the road to Emmaus who had apparently lost everything and restores them to fullness. Jesus comes to them and says, "See, I am not dead, I am alive. Now go, tell the world." While separated by 2,000 years, there is a sense that even today we would like to have that same experience. I'm sure the road to Emmaus is no different from any of the roads around South Pasadena. Maybe fewer traffic lights. Our roads also have their twists and turns, their hills and valleys. There is a sense over the last few weeks that we too have left what was familiar to us behind. The coronavirus has cost us much, socially, financially, and spiritually. As priests and people, it would be lovely if someone could arrive by our side, walk with us, and ease our worries away. We have the experience of Jerusalem here. As we walk on our journey to our Emmaus, we have plenty of food for thought. How do I stay connected to my parish and support it when I can't be physically present? In a Christian country, how do we reconcile so much division over the pandemic that we all need to survive? Perhaps we'll discover that, like 2,000 years ago, Jesus didn't save the two disciples from making the difficult journey, but he did walk with them every step of the journey. Today we make our own unique journey away from what is familiar on a Saturday evening, and we ask that Jesus journey with us. Jesus energized and re-energized those disciples and sent them to tell the others. The resurrection we celebrate in this Easter season calls us to be witnesses of great hope. I'm sure you've heard of the evangelical preacher Billy Graham. He died in the year 2018. It is said that Billy preached the gospel to more audiences and live audience than anyone else in history. Over 210 million people in 185 countries. We, in our own simple way, also are called to be ambassadors for the risen Christ. For without the resurrection, Christianity would be hopeless. St. Paul recognizes this when he wrote to the Corinthians. Some were saying that the resurrection had never happened. Paul made it clear. He said, "If Christ has not been raised, then our faith is in vain, and the gospel is nothing but a charade." In Holy Family Parish today, we proclaim openly that Christ indeed has raised from the dead. At the end of this story, the two brothers do what is only natural. They get up and rush back to Jerusalem to tell their friends what has happened. That's being a witness. Telling your friends what you have experienced. If you have been nourished by what you have encountered in Holy Family, please tell someone. If you have found living water, tell your friends. Encourage them to join you so that they too may share your joy. That's what disciples and friends do. You do not have to be Billy Graham. You simply have to tell what you have heard or seen. This is what drives us from fear to hope, from isolation to community, from sadness to joy. On this third Sunday of Easter, we will be nourished sacramentally in the breaking of bread. May God's word and our unity in prayer influence our words, our thoughts and actions over the week ahead. Lord, walk by our side and help us to be your witnesses.